The stadium lights dimmed. The crowd fell into a hush. Somewhere behind the curtain, two of the most famous people on earth were about to meet, not as royalty and legend, but as two souls searching for understanding in a world that never stopped watching. This was not just a celebrity encounter. This was the beginning of one of the most mysterious, emotional, and secret friendships of modern history between Michael Jackson and Princess Diana. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another untold story. The world knew them as icons. One was the king of pop, a musical genius whose voice and movements reshaped the sound of generations. The other was the people's princess, a royal whose compassion and vulnerability captured hearts across continents. But behind the flashbulbs, behind the applause, behind the crowns and crowns of fame, both were profoundly lonely. And it was in that loneliness that Michael Jackson and Princess Diana found each other. It was July 16, 1988. Wembley Stadium, London. The Bad World Tour had already become a global phenomenon, and this night was no different. Over 70,000 fans filled the stands, their screams echoing like thunder through the massive arena. But this performance carried a different weight. In the royal box sat Prince Charles and Princess Diana, the most photographed woman on earth. Backstage, Michael Jackson was nervous. Not the kind of nervous that came from stage fright. He had conquered that long ago. This was something deeper. He had heard whispers that Princess Diana would attend the show, and one thought kept looping in his mind. I can't sing Dirty Diana in front of her. The song, written years earlier, had nothing to do with the princess. But the name, the sensuality, the imagery, to Michael, it felt disrespectful. So he removed it from the set list. Then something unexpected happened. Just before the show, Diana approached him backstage. She was radiant, yet gentle, her smile warm but shy. Michael, ever the gentleman, bowed slightly. He apologized for removing Dirty Diana from the show. He explained that he didn't want to offend her. And Diana laughed. She told him it was her favorite song. Michael was stunned. The song was immediately put back into the show. And when the music hit that night, something shifted. It wasn't just a performance. It was a moment of connection, subtle but powerful, witnessed by thousands yet understood by only two. That night, the world saw two icons share a stage of admiration. But what the world did not see was what happened next. In the days following the concert, a quiet bond began to form. No press conferences, no headlines, no paparazzi photos, just two people reaching out through the silence. Michael Jackson and Princess Diana began talking on the phone. Late at night. Sometimes after midnight. Sometimes for hours. Michael later described these conversations as deeply personal, emotional, and honest. Diana would call him from Kensington Palace, while Michael sat alone at Neverland Ranch, surrounded by the toys and statues and music that filled his private sanctuary. They spoke about loneliness. They spoke about childhood. They spoke about the crushing pressure of fame. They spoke about the pain of being misunderstood by the world. And perhaps most surprisingly, they spoke about the burden of being watched, every move dissected, every word twisted, every silence interpreted. Michael understood her. Diana understood him. In a world that treated them like symbols, they finally felt seen as humans. At that time, both were at emotional crossroads. Princess Diana was navigating a collapsing marriage under the gaze of the entire world. Her relationship with Prince Charles had become cold, distant, and painful. The fairy tale that once captivated millions was unraveling in public view, leaving Diana isolated inside the very palace that was supposed to protect her. Michael Jackson, meanwhile, was grappling with the consequences of extreme fame. His childhood had been spent on stage, not in playgrounds. His adulthood was spent behind gates, not in freedom. The world loved his music but often misunderstood his heart. He felt trapped, adored but alone, celebrated but isolated. Their friendship became a sanctuary. They didn't talk about contracts or charts or headlines. They talked about fear. They talked about sadness. They talked about dreams. Michael once said that Diana had a gentle soul, someone who truly cared about people, not as fans, not as subjects, but as human beings. And Diana saw something in Michael that few others did. She saw a man who had never been allowed to be a boy. One of the most touching aspects of their friendship was their shared love for children. Princess Diana was famous for her humanitarian work. She hugged AIDS patients when others wouldn't. She walked through minefields to raise awareness. She visited hospitals, orphanages, and shelters, often without cameras, without announcement. Michael Jackson shared that same compassion. He built Neverland Ranch not as a symbol of wealth, but as a sanctuary for children, especially those who were sick, abandoned, or suffering. He donated millions to children's charities. He visited hospitals quietly, without press, often staying longer than anyone knew. During their conversations, they spoke often about children, about protecting innocence, about the responsibility they felt to use their platforms for good, about how childhood should be safe, joyful, and full of wonder, something both of them felt had been stolen from them. In each other, they found someone who understood that pain and that purpose. Despite their closeness, the world knew almost nothing about their bond. There were no red carpet photos, no public statements, no interviews confirming their friendship. And yet quietly, they remained connected. Why the secrecy? Because both lived in worlds where every relationship was scrutinized, politicized, sensationalized. A friendship between the king of pop and the people's princess would have sparked endless rumors, speculation, and headlines, none of which they wanted. They wanted something real, something private, something untouched by the noise. Their bond was not about romance, though many speculated, but about emotional survival. They were two of the most famous people alive, yet two of the loneliest. And in each other they found a mirror. There were moments of joy in their connection. Michael sent Diana a custom-designed jacket from his bad tour wardrobe. Diana reportedly cherished it, wearing it privately, away from cameras. Diana, in return, sent Michael gifts for his children, thoughtful, personal, and filled with warmth. They shared laughter. They shared stories. They shared tears. And through it all, Michael Jackson remained deeply respectful of Diana, her role, her struggles, her heart. He never spoke about her publicly while she was alive. Not once. Not in interviews. Not in documentaries. Not even when pressed. Because some stories are not meant for headlines. Some stories are meant for hearts. Then in August 1997, the world stopped. Princess Diana was dead. A car crash in Paris. The news spread like a shockwave across the globe. Millions were stunned. Millions wept. Millions mourned. But somewhere in the world, one man grieved in silence. Michael Jackson was devastated. Those close to him said he was inconsolable. He retreated from the public eye. He stopped speaking. He stopped performing. He locked himself away in grief. For Michael, Diana wasn't just a princess. She was a friend, a confidant, a kindred spirit, someone who had understood him when the world had not. And now she was gone. Michael was invited to attend Diana's funeral. But he declined, not out of disrespect, not out of indifference, but out of love. He said he could not bear the cameras. He could not bear the crowds. He could not bear the spectacle. He wanted to mourn her privately, quietly, authentically, the same way they had lived their friendship. Instead, he sent a private message to her family, expressing his sorrow and his admiration for her heart, her compassion, and her humanity. Years later, when asked about Diana, Michael's voice would soften. His eyes would change, and he would say simply, "She was a wonderful person." But the story didn't end there, because even after her death, Diana's spirit continued to shape Michael's life. He became even more focused on humanitarian work, even more devoted to helping children, even more determined to protect innocence in a world that often exploited it. And in many ways, his music grew more reflective, more emotional, more human. It was as if a part of Diana lived on in his mission. Then came the storm. The early 2000s brought allegations, trials, and relentless media attacks against Michael Jackson. His name, once synonymous with magic, became tangled in controversy and suspicion. The same press that had once adored him now hunted him. And once again he was alone. But those who knew his heart, those who had seen his kindness, his generosity, his pain, believed in his innocence. Michael always said that Diana had understood him. He often wondered what she would have said, what advice she would have given, what comfort she would have offered. And though she was gone, he carried her memory with him, quietly, privately, deeply. One of the most haunting parallels between their lives is this. Both were beloved by millions. Both were hounded by the media. Both were misunderstood. Both were lonely. Both were vulnerable. And both died young. Princess Diana at 36. Michael Jackson at 50. Two hearts that gave endlessly to the world, yet paid an unimaginable price for their fame. But their story is not one of tragedy alone. It is a story of connection, of empathy, of two souls who found refuge in each other's understanding, of a friendship that defied labels, defied expectations, defied the noise. It is a reminder that behind every icon is a human being, that behind every smile is a story, that behind every crown and every stage light is a heart that longs to be understood. In the end, Michael Jackson and Princess Diana were not just symbols. They were survivors. They were healers. They were dreamers. And in each other, they found something rare in a world of fame. Truth. Today, their legacies live on. Diana through her sons, through her humanitarian impact, through her enduring image as the people's princess. Michael through his music, his art, his philanthropy, and the millions of lives he touched. But their friendship, their secret, emotional, beautiful connection, remains one of the most touching untold stories of our time. A story not written in headlines, but in hearts. A story not told in tabloids, but in whispers. A story that reminds us that even the brightest stars sometimes need someone to sit with them in the dark. And maybe that is the greatest lesson of all. That fame does not erase pain. That love does not always come in the form of romance. That friendship can be just as powerful. And that sometimes the most meaningful connections are the ones the world never sees. And yet, even as the world slowly moved on, the echo of their connection never truly faded. In the quiet halls of memory, where headlines fall silent and crowds disappear, the bond between Michael Jackson and Princess Diana lingered like a soft melody, one that only a few could still hear, but one that never truly ended. Because some friendships do not die with the body. They live in the choices we make. They live in the compassion we extend. They live in the silence we protect. And for Michael Jackson, that silence became both a shield and a sanctuary. After Diana's passing, Michael became more withdrawn. Those close to him noticed a change not sudden, not dramatic, but deep. His laughter softened. His public appearances became rare. His interviews became fewer. The light that once danced effortlessly across his face now flickered cautiously, like a candle shielding itself from the wind. He did not speak about Diana in detail. He did not write songs directly about her. He did not create public tributes. But he carried her presence quietly in his thoughts, in his actions, in the causes he continued to champion. There were whispers among those close to him that he kept letters from Diana, handwritten notes filled with warmth and sincerity. Whether these letters still exist or remain hidden away in a private archive, no one knows for certain. But what is certain is that Michael never forgot her. He couldn't. She had seen him, not the performer, not the spectacle, not the myth, but the man. And once someone sees you that clearly, they never truly leave. As the years passed, Michael's life became increasingly complex. His body was tired. His spirit was bruised. His finances were strained. The world that once lifted him up now seemed eager to tear him down. Yet even in his darkest moments, Michael continued to give. He continued to visit children's hospitals. He continued to donate quietly to charities. He continued to write music that spoke of healing, unity, and hope. In many ways, he became even more like Diana. Not in appearance, not in status, but in purpose. Both had learned that true power was not in wealth or influence, but in kindness. And Michael carried that lesson forward, long after Diana was gone. There is a haunting irony in how their lives mirrored each other, not just in their suffering, but in their compassion. Princess Diana once said, "Carry out a random act of kindness with no expectation of reward." Michael Jackson once sang, "If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change." Two voices, different worlds, same message. Two hearts, different paths, same purpose. And though they walked separate roads, they walked them with the same intention, to leave the world better than they found it. But there is another layer to their story, one that is rarely discussed. It is the layer of protection. Princess Diana was constantly trying to escape the cage of the royal system. She wanted to be free. She wanted to be human. She wanted to love, to laugh, to live without permission. Michael Jackson was trying to escape a different cage, the prison of fame. He wanted privacy. He wanted peace. He wanted to live without judgment. And in each other, they found someone who understood what it meant to live behind invisible bars. They did not need to explain themselves. They did not need to pretend. They did not need to perform. They could simply be. And in a world that never allowed them to be, that was everything. One former associate of Michael once said, "Diana was one of the few people who didn't want anything from him. No fame, no money, no spotlight. She just wanted to talk." And Michael, who had spent his life surrounded by people who wanted something, a song, a photo, a favor, a moment, found something rare in Diana: presence. She listened. She cared. She remembered. And Michael, who often felt unseen, finally felt recognized. Their conversations were not glamorous. They did not talk about awards. They did not talk about fashion. They did not talk about power. They talked about pain. They talked about fear. They talked about children. They talked about how exhausting it was to always be strong in public while breaking in private. And in those conversations, they healed each other, not completely, not permanently, but enough to breathe. Enough to continue. Enough to survive another day. After Diana's death, Michael once reportedly told a close friend, "She was the only one who really understood me." Whether that statement is literal or emotional, it reflects a deeper truth, that Michael rarely felt understood. He had been misunderstood since childhood. Misunderstood as a performer. Misunderstood as a man. Misunderstood as a human being. And in Diana, he found someone who didn't try to interpret him. She simply accepted him. As the years passed and Michael's life became increasingly consumed by legal battles and public scrutiny, His isolation deepened. He traveled constantly. He moved between countries. He lived in hotels and rented homes, never settling, never rooted. Somewhere along the way, the world stopped seeing the boy who had danced on the Ed Sullivan Show. They stopped seeing the man who had written, "Heal the World." They stopped seeing the human behind the legend. But Diana had seen him. And even in her absence, that memory became a quiet anchor in his life. In 2009, when the world awoke to the news of Michael Jackson's death, it felt eerily familiar. Another sudden loss. Another global shock. Another beloved figure gone too soon. Another life consumed by fame, pressure, and misunderstanding. Millions gathered. Millions mourned. Millions wept, just as they had for Diana. The same world that had adored them now grieved them. But the same world had also failed to protect them. When Michael's memorial service was held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, his children stood on stage, Paris, Prince and Blanket, fragile, grieving and brave. Paris spoke through tears, saying, "Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine." And in that moment, the world saw Michael not as a superstar, not as a controversy, but as a father, a man who loved his children fiercely and unconditionally. And once again, his humanity broke through the noise. If Diana had been alive, many believe she would have stood with him. Not in front of cameras, not in press conferences, but in private, in compassion, in understanding, in quiet support. Because that was the kind of person she was. And that was the kind of friendship they shared. There is something profoundly tragic and profoundly beautiful about the fact that these two souls, who brought so much light into the world, found their deepest connection in darkness. Not because they were broken, but because they were honest. They did not pretend to be invincible. They did not hide their pain from each other. They did not mask their fear. They allowed themselves to be vulnerable, something the world rarely allowed them to be. And in that vulnerability, they found strength. Their story challenges the way we think about fame. We often imagine that wealth and recognition erase suffering, that applause heals wounds, that admiration fills emptiness. But Michael Jackson and Princess Diana teach us the opposite. That fame can isolate, that admiration can distance, that applause can drown out the voice of the heart, and that sometimes the loneliest place on earth is at the top. Yet their story also teaches us something hopeful. That connection is possible even in isolation. That understanding can exist even in misunderstanding. That friendship can bloom even in the harshest environments. And that sometimes the most powerful relationships are the ones no one sees. Imagine the scene. Late at night. A palace on one side of the world. A ranch on the other. Two people both unable to sleep. Both burdened by the weight of the world. Both searching for someone who could understand. A phone rings. A voice answers. And for a few hours, the world fades away. No cameras. No headlines. No expectations. Just two souls speaking honestly in the dark. That is the heart of their story. Not glamour. Not scandal. Not romance. But connection. There is a reason this story continues to resonate decades later. It is not because of fame. It is because of humanity. We recognize ourselves in their loneliness. We recognize our own desire to be understood. We recognize our own longing for someone who sees us, not our titles, not our mistakes, not our image, but our heart. And in Michael Jackson and Princess Diana, we see what happens when two hearts recognize each other in a world that refuses to slow down. Some may ask, why does this story matter now? Because the world is louder than ever. Because loneliness is more widespread than ever. Because fame is more accessible and more isolating than ever. Because social media connects us to millions, yet leaves many feeling unseen. And because this story reminds us that real connection is not about followers or headlines. It is about listening. It is about caring. It is about presence. Their friendship was not built on convenience. It was built on compassion. It was not built on opportunity. It was built on empathy. It was not built on publicity. It was built on privacy. And in a world that thrives on exposure, their bond survived in silence. There is also a quiet tragedy in the fact that both of them were never fully able to escape their cages. Diana tried. Michael tried. They both sought freedom, not from responsibility but from judgment. Not from duty but from cruelty. Not from fame but from distortion. And though they found moments of peace, neither was ever truly free. Yet in each other they found a glimpse of freedom, even if only in conversation, even if only in understanding. Somewhere in some unseen corner of history, their voices still echo. Not in tabloids, not in documentaries, not in gossip, but in the hearts of those who understand what it means to feel unseen, what it means to feel misunderstood, what it means to feel alone in a crowded world. And in that echo, their story continues. There is a line in one of Michael Jackson's songs that feels especially relevant here. "You're not alone, I'm here with you." Perhaps he wrote it for someone else. Perhaps he wrote it for himself. But perhaps in some quiet, unseen way, it was also written for Diana. Because that was the essence of their bond. You are not alone. And perhaps that is the message they would want us to remember. Not their suffering, not their tragedy, not their fame, but their humanity, their compassion, their connection, their courage to be vulnerable in a world that demands perfection. As we look back on their lives, it becomes clear that their greatest legacy is not in music charts or royal titles. It is in the hearts they touched, the lives they changed, the kindness they showed, the understanding they offered, and the reminder they left behind that even the brightest stars need someone to sit with them in the dark. Their story is not one of romance. It is one of recognition. It is not one of scandal. It is one of survival. It is not one of gossip. It is one of grace. And in a world that often confuses attention with love, their story reminds us that love does not need an audience. Some stories fade with time. This one does not. Because it speaks to something timeless, the human need to be seen, heard, and understood. And in Michael Jackson and Princess Diana, we see what happens when two souls meet that need for each other, even briefly, even privately, even imperfectly. Perhaps one day, more letters will surface. Perhaps more details will be revealed. Perhaps more stories will emerge. But even if they never do, the heart of this story remains unchanged. Two lonely icons. One quiet connection. One secret friendship. And one enduring reminder that behind every legend is a human being who longs to be understood. If this story has moved you, take a moment to honor their legacy by choosing kindness, by listening more deeply, and by seeing the humanity in those around you. And as their voices continue to echo across time, there is one final truth that remains impossible to ignore. Michael Jackson and Princess Diana were never meant to be understood by the world. They were meant to understand each other. In a universe built on spectacle, they chose sincerity. In a culture driven by exposure, they chose privacy. In a system that demanded perfection, they chose vulnerability. And in that choice, they created something rare, a bond untouched by applause, untarnished by rumor, and unbroken by time. Their story is not a chapter that closes. It is a quiet heartbeat that continues beneath the noise of history, reminding us that the most meaningful connections are often the ones that leave no public trace. No photographs, no headlines, no official records, just two hearts meeting in silence. And perhaps that is what makes their friendship so powerful. Not that it was famous, but that it was real. In the end, Michael Jackson did not need the world to understand him. He needed one person who did. And for a brief, precious time, that person was Diana. And Diana, surrounded by titles yet starved for tenderness, found in Michael not a legend but a listener. Two souls walking separate paths, carrying the same weight, finding comfort in the same quiet. Their story reminds us that connection is not built in public, it is built in moments, in conversations, in compassion, in the courage to be honest when no one else is watching. And that is the legacy they leave behind, not as icons, not as symbols, but as human beings who dared to feel deeply in a world that demanded strength. May we carry their lesson forward. May we listen more. May we judge less. May we choose kindness even when the world chooses noise. And may we never forget that sometimes the greatest stories are not written in history books, they are written in the hearts of those who lived them. And if you want to continue discovering untold stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because every story deserves to be remembered.